Every year without fail it happened. My birthday, a date I marked on the calendar with excitement, was completely forgotten. As the years passed, the disappointment grew. My family, it seemed, had one focus: my brother. His birthday was celebrated with grandeur, with pomp and circumstance, while I quietly celebrated in the shadows, watching as they lavished him with attention, gifts, and parties that I could only dream of. I used to think it was just an accident. Maybe they were busy. Maybe they forgot. But as the years went by, it became clear. It wasn't an accident. It was a pattern. A deliberate, cruel oversight that had shaped the course of my life. But this year was going to be different. This time I would make sure they remembered my birthday. This time I would ensure the world saw how it felt to be cast aside, to be invisible while the world spun around someone else. I would take my revenge. Growing up, my brother was always the golden child. He excelled in everything: academics, sports, and even social skills. People adored him. And why wouldn't they? He was charming, confident, and always seemed to have the perfect life. He got the best grades, won the trophies, and had a crowd of friends following him around like he was some sort of celebrity. Meanwhile, I was the quieter one, the invisible one. I kept my head down, tried to stay out of the way, but always felt like I was just in the background. My birthday, no matter how much I tried to make it special, was always overlooked. My parents would make excuses. "We're too busy with your brother's sports game," they'd say. Or, "We forgot with all the planning for your brother's exams." Every year the same routine. His birthday, however, was an event. Friends, relatives, neighbors, all gathered for lavish celebrations. The best food, the best entertainment, the biggest presents. It wasn't just a birthday. It was an extravaganza. And I spent my special day alone, watching the grand event unfold in the next room, feeling like a ghost in my own home. It wasn't until my 18th birthday that I realized how deep the wound ran. That year, my brother's birthday was just days before mine. And guess what? They threw a massive party, one that lasted all weekend. I helped set up as usual, making sure everything was perfect for him. I didn't ask for much. Just a little acknowledgement, a little bit of love. But when my day came, my parents were too busy. They had already planned another event for my brother. An exclusive weekend trip to an amusement park to celebrate his latest academic success. I was left behind. I went to my room that night, tears streaming down my face. But a seed of anger had been planted. I wasn't going to be the forgotten child anymore. I wasn't going to let this slide. It was time for me to take control. I spent weeks quietly observing, planning. My brother's weaknesses, my parents' blind spots, the family dynamics. All of it. I knew how to play the game. I had spent years studying the pattern, learning the rules of a game that wasn't mine to win. But now it would be my turn to dictate the rules. The plan was simple but devastating. I was going to throw my own party. Party so grand, so extravagant, that it would force my family to recognize me for once in my life. A party where I would invite everyone. Everyone who had ever ignored me, left me behind, or treated me as an afterthought. I wasn't just throwing a party. I was crafting a spectacle. Every detail had to be perfect. I rented a luxurious venue, hired the best caterers, a famous DJ, and even arranged for a famous celebrity guest to make a surprise appearance. I spared no expense. My brother, of course, had no idea what was coming. The invitations went out in secret. My family had no clue. When they began to hear about the event, whispers spread like wildfire. People were shocked, intrigued. The quiet, reserved sibling who had always lived in the shadows was suddenly in the spotlight. The contrast to my brother's typical birthday bash was glaring. The night of the party arrived, and the guests flooded in. I stood at the entrance, dressed in a way that no one had ever seen me before. Gone was the shy, unnoticed child. In her place was a confident, commanding figure who had finally taken her place in the world. My brother arrived with his usual entourage. He looked at me, a puzzled expression on his face. "What is this?" he asked, as he surveyed the lavish decorations, the celebrity, the atmosphere of exclusivity. "This," I said, smiling, is what it feels like to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be important for once in your life. The room went quiet. All eyes were on me, on my brother. The guests, many of whom had always fawned over him, began to take note of me. His popularity, his charm, it all began to unravel. As the night wore on, my brother's unease became apparent. He tried to engage with people, but his usual charm seemed to fall flat. The attention that he had always basked in now seemed to shift toward me. People were talking about me, complimenting me, asking me questions. The same people who had once ignored me were now fascinated. But it wasn't just about the attention. It was about the realization my family had to face. They had neglected me for so long, and now the consequences of that neglect were impossible to ignore. The lavish celebrations for my brother suddenly seemed petty, shallow, and one-dimensional in comparison to the grandeur I had created. The next day, my parents confronted me. "What did you do?" my mother asked, her voice tinged with disbelief and anger. "You embarrassed your brother. You humiliated us." But I didn't back down. "No, I didn't," I replied calmly. "I gave you what you never gave me, a chance to be seen, a chance to matter." The family dynamics were never the same after that night. My brother, though initially hurt and confused, began to understand. It was no longer about him. It was about both of us, each deserving of respect, love, and acknowledgement. In the months that followed, things changed. The parties stopped revolving around my brother. My parents made a conscious effort to acknowledge my achievements, my efforts, and my existence. My brother and I, while still different, grew to respect each other in ways we never had before. As for me, I no longer needed the validation. I had proven my worth, not just to my family but to myself. The revenge wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about reclaiming my voice, my space, and my place in the world. And that, in itself, was the greatest victory of all. As the months passed, life seemed to settle into a new rhythm. My family, though initially shaken by the party, began to adjust. They acknowledged my existence more, and though there were no grand gestures, I felt like I was finally part of the family dynamic in a way I had always longed for. But something didn't feel right. I started receiving strange messages. It began with anonymous texts on my phone, simple at first. "Enjoy your moment, it's all you'll ever get," one read. Another simply said, "You think they'll love you now? Wait and see." At first, I thought it was just someone who had a grudge, perhaps a jealous friend or someone who had attended the party. But as the messages continued, their tone grew more ominous. The final message I received read, "Everything you've worked for will come crumbling down. You've awakened something you can't undo." I felt a chill run through me. It wasn't just about me anymore. This was something bigger, something darker that was closing in. But who could it be? Who knew about my plans? I tried to dismiss it as a prank, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. My brother, though he had stopped overshadowing me, had become quieter. He avoided me more often, and when we did speak, there was something cold in his tone. The messages continued, now more frequent. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering who could be behind them. Were my parents involved? Did they have something to do with these cryptic warnings? But the messages were too specific, too personal to be mere coincidence. Then, one evening, after a particularly troubling message, I decided to confront my brother. I knew he had a way with technology, a way of hiding things from people. I knocked on his door, my heart racing as I prepared to ask him the question that had been gnawing at me for weeks. He didn't answer at first. When he finally opened the door, I could see it. His eyes, the hint of guilt, the unease in his expression. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You know something, don't you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Who's sending these messages?" His face paled, and for a moment I thought he might admit it. But then he stepped back, his gaze hardening. "You're paranoid. It's nothing. Just drop it, all right." His words were sharp, dismissive. But there was something in his eyes, something that didn't match his words. Something was off. Just then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, my hands trembling as I looked at the screen. Another message. Your brother has been playing a dangerous game. He's not who you think he is. The phone slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a soft thud. My brother's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. I could see him struggling to hide something. His hands trembling, his gaze darting around as though he were expecting someone to appear at the door. Who sent this? I demanded, stepping closer. He swallowed hard, his lips tightening. It's nothing really. Just leave it alone. But my instincts screamed that there was more to this. My brother wasn't just a victim of the situation. He had been hiding something. The messages were no coincidence. It wasn't just about my party or about revenge. It was about a secret that he had kept from me, something far darker than I could have ever imagined. The days that followed were filled with tension. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I turned a corner or entered a room, I felt like someone was lurking just out of sight, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. Then one night everything came crashing down. I was in my room when the lights flickered, then went out completely. The power cut off, and the house plunged into darkness. I sat there in the silence, my heart pounding in my chest. A knock at the door broke the stillness. I stood, my instincts telling me something was wrong. I opened the door slowly, only to find an envelope on the floor. No one was there. I picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the words written in bold, urgent strokes. Meet me at the old warehouse tomorrow night. Lone. You want the truth. This is the last chance to stop it. The message was unsigned, but I didn't need to know who had written it. I knew it was my only chance to find out what was going on, to learn what my brother had been hiding. The messages, the warnings, the unease. It all led to this. The next night, I drove to the warehouse, the dilapidated structure looming in the darkness. I could feel the weight of the moment, the significance of what was about to unfold. Was this the truth I had been searching for? Or was it a trap? As I stepped inside, the shadows seemed to deepen, swallowing me whole. A figure emerged from the darkness, and I froze, my heart racing. It was my brother. You finally came, he said, his voice strained, his eyes shadowed with guilt. What's going on? I demanded. What have you been hiding from me? He stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. I never wanted you to find out. I never wanted to drag you into this mess. I watched him closely, every word hanging heavy in the air. You have to know the messages. They weren't just random, he continued. They were warning you about what's coming. About what? About our family. About the things I've done, he whispered. The things I've been forced to do. And then the truth hit me. My brother wasn't just the golden child. He had been living a double life. A life full of secrets, lies, and dangerous choices. He wasn't the perfect son. He was part of something far darker than I could ever have imagined. As the realization sank in, my brother's eyes widened in terror. You don't understand, he pleaded. I didn't want to. But before he could finish his sentence, the doors to the warehouse slammed shut. A figure in black stepped forward from the shadows, and my brother's face drained of color. You should have left it alone, the figure said, stepping into the dim light. It wasn't just my brother who had secrets. We had both been players in a much larger game, one that neither of us could escape from.